Welcome back to episode 42 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testori. On today's podcast, I had the pleasure of welcoming on Jack Whettingsteel. He is the co-founder and CMO of HelpBank. You probably know HelpBank through its association with Simon Squibb. Simon has essentially taken the online world by storm with his interviews and helping people figure out their dreams. But we're not talking about Simon today, we're talking about Jack. Jack has done so much with the businesses. His previous experience was running a marketing agency, building content, and that's how he started working with Simon there. He talks about how he went from working in Sainsbury's to running his business to then partnering with Simon, and how he's been able to think bigger than he has ever thought before. He is just a really cool, humble, chilled, laid-back guy. He talks massively about relationships and what he'd look to do to find your purpose, your dream, and essentially pursue what you want to pursue. We speak about the British education system, how there's shortcomings in allowing people to focus on having the skills to, if they want to use it, become entrepreneurs, among tons of other things. This is one of my favorite podcasts because it is just two guys in their 20s talking really authentically as they would down the pub. If you haven't, check out HelpBank because they are doing some unbelievably cool stuff that I guarantee can help you in your entrepreneurial journey. As always, thank you for tuning into the podcast. Leave a like, subscribe, share with a friend if you want. See ya. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Jack, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Joe.
You're most welcome. It's taken a little bit of time for us to get this together, but we've got this aligned and I'm excited to get this one out. Jack, my first question to you is, what does growth look like to you?
Growth, it's a big question because it covers a lot of different areas, I think. For me, the main areas of growth come down to, of course, growth in business, growth on a personal level, and then growth in terms of experiences as well. For me, what I really value is family, experiences, and then impact. So if I'm doing more to get closer to my goals within those areas and have a bigger impact, more scale, more success, more experiences, and more time with my family, deeper relationships with my family, that's growth to me.
I like that. And if you were to recap on 2024, pretty much at the end of it now, what would you say is the thing that you've grown the most this year?
I think this year, to be honest, the thing that has grown the most in my life is just my confidence in what I can take on and how I can overcome things and still continue growing off the back of it. You know, there's been a lot of challenges this year. There's been a lot of growth within the companies this year, which has required me to grow in a lot of ways. And of course, you know, there's ups, there's downs, and not everything is perfect. But for me, giving myself that evidence that no matter what is thrown at me, I've kind of been able to take it in my stride and keep growing and deal with it and, you know, not get thrown off. That's given me a lot of confidence and belief that I can just keep doing that, which feels really good. So that's something I'm really grateful for.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, I guess. Well, we started off this year on the Simon Squibb social pages. There was 4 million followers, and now there's 10 million plus. We started this year with, I believe, 6 to 8 team members, and now we're just hiring, so we'll be up to 22, 23. The amount of change that is required to go for a scrappy operation of just a few people with some success to like having to become a very real company in order to maintain that level of scale and output and people, that has required a lot from me in terms of new skills I've had to learn, people that I've had to meet in order to be able to know the things I know to grow the businesses. And I guess to handle that and to manage that without falling off or kind of accepting that maybe what got me here might not get me there. That's I guess the biggest example to me is like the scale that you see on the outside You might expect it to just be, like linear, but it's very much like you kind of have to. It gets to a point where I have to stop, step back, look at where we're going, and realize that actually I've got to learn a load more skills in order to keep going. So that I guess that's probably the main example that comes to mind. But there's a lot.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel it's one of those things. I'm in my late 20s, and I know you're in and around the same age. I haven't had the experience of managing people in the capacity that I have in my agency before. So when I've got to that new level of getting to 8, 9 hires, it's completely challenging. And I think I've personally felt a level of imposter syndrome where I'm leading a meeting with people and I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm making most of this up as I'm going along. But I feel that's sometimes the best remedy of growth is you can read all the strategy books you want and leadership books, but it's until you get in the trenches and you're actually trying to be the best leader possible and not be a boss, it's completely different. What would you say has been the best hire of the year in the sense of you've done something, you're like, yeah, I absolutely got this spot on with bringing XYZ person into the team?
The the hire of the year, did you say?
Yeah, essentially. So you mentioned you've gone from 7, 8 people to 18 people this year. Has there been someone that you've brought into the team that you thought, yeah, we absolutely nailed it here?
Yes, yeah. To be honest, pretty much every hire that we've brought in this year, we done very carefully and in a different way to how we hired before. Because when we started out, we hired very much on like who was inspired by the mission, who has the right passion for what we're doing, and also a lot within my own and our own networks of the kind of co-founders as well, because people that you think might be a good idea. And again, that's great, and with those people are still with us, and that is really great to do when starting out. But of course, you can't keep doing that forever. You can't scale a massive company only on people that say the co-founders know and trust. So at some point, you have to kind of go cold. And one key hire that sticks out to me is Adrian. Shout out to Adrian. He is our sales manager at HelpBank. And he kind of came in as an intern, but he reached out to us relentlessly for months and months and months. And he was very creative. He'd listened back to a podcast I'd done with one of our other co-founders, Callum, like 2 years ago, and he knew all about our story. He knew all about the HelpBank mission, and he made us a dedicated video talking about why it meant so much to him and why this was the company that he really wanted to get into next. He wasn't worried about money. He wasn't worried about anything else. He just knew that this is the mission he wanted to be a part of, and he did everything you could imagine to get that across to us. And he would have taken no for an answer, but he wasn't going to stop until he got a no. So I really respected the way he came out to us, particularly as the role that he suggested that he might be good for would be within sales, where those kind of outreach skills that he was demonstrating by reaching out to us when we have very crowded inboxes. I knew he'd be able to use those exact skills to help grow the companies. So he flew over from Amsterdam to Worthing in the UK just to have an interview with us and to meet in person. And then he ended up completely moving to England once he got the job, and now he lives here, and he's been with us for 6 months, and he's been great. So yeah, he's definitely a standout person, and for me, the reason that he's been great and that I knew he'd be great is because he really cared. He went after it. So he was obviously had the right attitude, and he just really, really cares about the mission. And then he has a desire to learn. So even though he's super talented, on top of that, he has all the key ingredients to keep getting better and better and better. And he's just an example of a lot of the people we bring into the company that they show this same sort of attitude, drive, passion, and genuine belief in the mission. And these are the people that make make the best hires and can make such a big impact to the mission that we have.
Do you believe that tenacious energy can be taught, or do you think it's just stuff that people have?
I think it can be taught, but I think it has to come from genuine care and belief. If you just kind of need a job, you need a bit of money, and you need to do a certain thing, and you think, right, I should go out and get a job, then okay, you might go and apply on Indeed for those jobs, or you might, or let's say, you want to come on a freelance basis, you might do like a little bit of outreach, kind of soft pitching yourself, and that's fine. But to have that sheer genuine tenacity, that also comes with a sense of like care and passion. I feel like you have to genuinely have the belief and care within you for that particular thing. And everyone probably has that particular thing. If you're not that motivated to really go after the opportunity that you want, then you're probably going after the wrong opportunity, which is fine. Life is long. There's a lot of space and time to find the right opportunities. But whether it's, your dream client or your dream job or internship, whatever it is, like, talks to something that matters enough to you, which in my opinion all the best companies do. They should have a mission which matters to a lot of people. And if that is you're one of those people, then yeah, I think you can definitely be taught how to then, effectively go after that opportunity, because you should have the passion inside of you to genuinely go and make it happen.
I agree. I think most people, not even young people, have just not found their purpose and their passion. And are you familiar with the Japanese concept of ikigai?
Yes. Yes.
I think it's finding their ikigai. And it's a concept that I've spoken about a few times, and I talk about in my own messaging amongst my marketing, is that there's something that everyone is passionate about. And typically, if you want to find what you're passionate about, it's what you're watching at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday evening after your day's worth of work. You're on YouTube and it's your search history. It's what you're into. And some people, it could be Naruto. For some people, it could be business. And I think a lot of the time it's about aligning the two. And a lot of people struggle to find the alignment between the two. And I've got friends that they run a street food business, they're chefs, and the love they have for food, they're going to be way better at running a street food business than me, because they have absolute love and admiration for the art, the skill of cooking. They find it fun. And even when it isn't fun, because say 50% of the time business is not fun, it's the boring emails, it's the slog of work that you're doing on a Tuesday, where you're thinking, why am I doing all of this when I could be gallivanting around the world doing really cool stuff? And I think it's just people don't take enough time to take a step back, outwardly reflect and think, what is it I could really get my teeth sunk into? And I think it's cool, the mission that guys like you, Simon, Alex Hormozy are pushing out there, the narrative where, as we were talking before this podcast started, there's such opportunity online for people to replace their income and just work more towards their passion. And I think you touched upon an author, philanthropist, philosopher that I love, Naval Ravikant. So have you read it's not his book, it's the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Have you read that book?
No, I've listened to the full How to Get Rich, which I believe makes up a big portion of the almanac. I don't know if that's right.
I haven't read that, so I can't see if there's parallels, but I imagine that the almanac is just a compilation of all of Naval's tweets and YouTube videos and publications, really. So I suppose
Sure.
so. So
Yeah, no,
talking about
that's
that
great.
philosophy, yeah, it's just saying on that philosophy side of business, for me, I consumed a lot of his literature from 2022 until now, and that's really shaped how I've tried to redirect what I was doing. So for you, can you just kind of touch upon your story as to how you started teaming with Simon and how that's grown since? I know you said you've been to Dubai, you're in LA, you've been traveling around. What's the biggest spark that you've seen in the last year from what you've been doing?
Sure. Yeah, I'll touch on how it all came about, if that's helpful. So, initially, my background, in terms of the online entrepreneurship world, is in, I guess, kind of the agency space. I tried out doing Facebook ads as a service for a bit, not much success. And then I found some success in email marketing and copywriting. That was kind of my thing a few years ago. Prior to that, typical story. I was a uni student with a job at Sainsbury's and a lot of energy, but no idea what to do with it. Um, and I was sick of uni and I was sick of the job, and I knew that I was capable of a lot more, but I had no idea what that was. As soon as I kind of found out that there was this thing called entrepreneurship, and there were people, really making it for themselves online, I was hooked and I was gone, and I started educating myself. And it's crazy to believe that there was a time where I didn't even know that happened. But I don't know, I guess growing up in a small town, TikTok not necessarily being a thing, so like certain things that might have interested me that now TikTok might just show to me. I don't know. I'd never really been exposed to. So once that spark went on in my brain, I kind of basically dropped everything and pursued a life of educating myself on how to start my own business, how to be free. Read all the typical entrepreneur books, and over the space of, I guess, a year or so, got to the point where I was making enough money to quit my job, and uh, kind of had somewhat success in that. But how it all ended up connecting with Simon and then what we're doing now is I met my now very close friend and co-founder Callum Church. I met him through TikTok. So I was documenting my personal development journey on TikTok, and he was doing the same. But he had a self-development podcast, kind of like this one, and he invited me on to share my story, which I did. Also around that time, he invited Simon Squibb on his podcast. Simon had a small following online at the time. He'd just been kind of sharing his learnings from selling a company and stuff like that. And Simon also went on Callum's podcast. Callum was also freelance editing at that point and ended up doing some editing for Simon. Long story short, I ended up moving down to Worthing, and me and Callum become best friends, and we're going to start a business together. And Simon says to Callum, "Look, I want to go big with this helping people for free thing. I really want to make a big impact and get more content out there and do it in a great way. Do you want to be a part of it?" And Callum was like, "Sure, but I want Jack involved," because me and Callum had planned to kind of start a business together. We were going to combine our skills anyway. So luckily for me, Callum brought me into that straight away. And Simon came on, I guess, as a client of ours. And we helped him grow on social. He was running a podcast at the time, which we helped him run. He had, I think, 6,000 followers on Instagram at the time. And then throughout that year, we found some good success, and we got really close as a trio. And then Simon said, "Look, I want to scale this. I want to make it into a platform that is bigger than me, a way to help entrepreneurs at scale. Do you guys want to be co-founders in it? And do you want to set this up together?" And of course, me and Callum were like, "Yeah, 100%." We loved working with Simon. He, I guess, became a mentor to us. So we were learning a lot from him, but also, we wanted to start and kind of continue running our own business. And we knew, Simon was only one person, so we needed also a way to kind of scale beyond him. And I guess the stars kind of aligned. So we kind of set out then to continue growing Simon's personal brand, which is now 10 million followers across social media. But then we launched a platform, HelpBank, which is designed to be the place that people can go hang out and learn business, and get the help, tools, community they need along the way. And then, I guess now a year and a half later, we're at 190,000 users on the platform, 10 million followers on social, and we're kind of trying to build this whole ecosystem of help, inspiration, and community to help people kind of take control of their life and be free.
I love that. I did a bit of research before this podcast, naturally, but I really wanted you to just encompass that and just share to people, because I think there's, personally, I see a lot of people in the UK, as you mentioned, there's a lot of this lost pessimism that things can't be done. And I think, I don't know if it's a case of just in the UK, but if I compare it to Brits to Americans, Americans have this unequivocal belief that they can get stuff done. And maybe there's a hint of delusion there. However, what I see amongst a lot of friends that I know and people that I know is that they think on such a small scale, and I think what you've spoken about there is just a far grander vision. So would you say you've always been someone who's always tried to look past a pretty atypical vision amongst people? Is it something that you've developed as been part of the team?
Yeah, on a personal level, definitely. I've always strived for an abnormal life. I've always wanted to maximize my life in any way, whether it's love, experiences, money. And then I know on the other side of that comes, stress, problems. But I've always been kind of okay with that. And I've always wanted to maximize it. But I guess going back to even a very young age, my parents did a great job at kind of making me believe that anything was possible, by the way they raised me. So that that fundamentally, I feel like gave me a bit of a head start against a lot of people who, whether it's their parents or school system or society, kind of puts limiters on them. Maybe it's partly who I am as well, but a lot of it is definitely my parents. I felt like I could do anything. I remember one time when I was a kid, hearing someone, in my family saying, "Oh, school is the best day of your life. Like you'll look back on it like that. So enjoy it while you're there." And I was like, "No, there's no way. There's no way that school, a place that is all right for social life, but a place where I don't get to choose what I'm doing with my time. I don't get to choose the things that I'm learning. There's no way that that is the best day of my life, particularly when it ends when I'm like 18, and I've got a whole life beyond there. There's no way that life goes downhill from there. So I just refused it. So I guess for me that I was always determined to kind of prove that wrong, and to make life keep getting better, and keep experiencing more things. And then also on the other side, I did see a lot of struggle and hardship on my parents financially, um, which which I guess motivated me again subconsciously to start with, but from a young age to make that never have to be the case, with me and my own family, and also to give back to them in the future. So I did have a lot of small motivators to push me in that sort of direction, even though it wasn't obvious to start with. Certain things had to fall in place. I had to meet certain people and discover that certain things were possible to really get me started on that journey.
And it sounds like you and I have had a fairly similar upbringing. My parents, they've done an amazing job, but they weren't middle class, upper class. They were very much working class, but they gave me all they could, and I saw them struggle, and that's been one of my big drivers. And this is why I think business is such a cool game, is that it can give you such a disproportionate payout. If you strike hot and you find something, you can get paid out a crazy amount, which then it is the kind of compass for so many other things that you can do further down the line. And I think if you can use it as the right vehicle that it is, people say that money is the root of all evil. I think if you use money for good, similar to what you guys are doing at HelpBank, that there's so much you can do with it, and there's so much you can inspire and help people. And it's just really a vehicle to make change. What advice would you give to 20-year-old Jack then?
Probably the number one thing that I've learned from Simon, which is think so big that people think you're crazy. Because when you're starting out, it's easy to kind of set your sights on a certain goal, um, and that's fine. But I think people don't realize that when you have the right motivation, you build discipline, you genuinely care about what it is that you're doing, you enjoy it, so that you're motivated to really change your life around the things that you're doing. You will achieve so much more than you could ever realize, that you might as well just think so big people think you're crazy, because in every way you will achieve way more than you thought initially possible. And initially I was chasing just money, which I think is fine, because I didn't have it. But I think very quickly, and again, this is another big thing that Simon taught me, is like, life's about a lot more than that. And if you're motivated by just money, it's fleeting. Money is fleeting. And also, if like once you get it, you're going to then wonder, okay, so what next? So it's a lot easier to focus on, what kind of impact you want to have, and then make sure, like you said, you have the right vehicle around it that also allows you to make money in the process, because that is more than possible. Um, people have the wrong beliefs, and they don't realize that you can make a genuine impact in the world while building something super valuable, which also financially compensates you for the good that you're doing in the world, and the value that you're bringing. So yeah, I would just tell my 20-year-old self, like, you're on the right path, stick at it, but also just think big, think about impact, and think longer term as well. I think I wanted quite a lot within 6 months, which is fine to aim for, but because there's a lot of growth you have to have and a lot of change you have to go through as a person, sometimes things just do take longer than you initially realize that they might, but then it is very much compounding. There's a famous saying that something like people overestimate, what they can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in 5. I think that's so true. And, definitely in my case, now that I'm 4 or 5 years in or something like that, like in my first year, I didn't achieve anything crazy, but I managed to quit my job, sure, but that was just about it. But now 5 years in, I think if I'd have seen at the start where I'd be now, not necessarily in terms of money, but just in terms of all of the things that we're doing, the impact that we're having, the team that I've got, all of that, I would have been blown away.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think, I don't think there's anything wrong for people who are starting out to just look and say, I was the exact same way. All I want to do is replace my income. I knew I set a number of all I have to make is £1,000 a month in order to live. That means I pay for my rent, my gym memberships, a bit of food, and just the basics. That is all I need. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is that they might be, let's just say someone's living in London. They're looking at, I'm making £4,000 a month. They're looking at all of this life that they've inflated. Was if they broke everything down and they went scratch beneath the surface and figured out, let me cover Maslow's hierarchy of need. Let me give myself shelter, cover, and the basics, and then work from there. They can achieve so much more. And I think so many people I know have fallen into this trap where I've got a friend who started a business earlier this year, found out that it was 10 times harder than it was, and he's just gone back into his job because I think he's looked and he's thought, I've got this vehicle here now. He's earning pretty well for a job, but then he's thought, I need to go all of these steps back down to then build back up. And a lot of people think, I'm earning 60K here. I deserve to earn 60K here. And everything's just going to transfer straight across. But then you have to build that pyramid, or not that pyramid, that tower straight back up. And I think if you can cover your bases, and that's always what I've tried to focus on, and that's what I encourage people to do. And then you can start to think about that vision. That's it. And at times I've looked at my goals and thought, that's ridiculous what I've thought about trying to achieve. And when I tell it to people, like, mate, there's no way you can do that. But as you said, think bigger. So I guess, Jack, with that.
Sorry, Joe, you cut out a little bit, but I did have something to add on to that.
Yeah, please.
I think 100% you're bang on there. And what's interesting is what you want to do, I think, is kind of mitigate your risk to start with. Like get your costs down if you can. Like don't get your costs as low as possible so that to live you do only need, let's say, £1,000. Don't take on unnecessary things at a young age, in my opinion. Like a really high rent if you're or even a mortgage or like a car finance or something like that. Like keep your costs down low. So that you're not making the game harder for yourself when you do try and switch. So then, even if you do have a decently paying job, that you only maybe need to make half of that salary back to actually cover your bases. And if you're making let's say 50K in a job, if you can then get to the point where you're making 25K as like a, I don't know, as a freelancer doing something you genuinely enjoy, you're going to have freedom. You can cover your costs if your costs are low, and you're also going to have so much more, control over your time and enjoyment in what you do as well. If you're like doing something that you enjoy, then it's worth way more than that slightly higher salary, which after tax and all of that, and most likely lifestyle inflation, really kind of makes no difference to your life anyway. So it's so key for people to I think consider that. You're right, to when they're starting out, and then once you get to that point, you can think a lot bigger, and you can keep growing from there. But I think getting your costs down and then getting to a point where you can cover those costs is a great starting point for most people. I would just add as well, though, that you also want to probably be earning a bit more than your costs or have some type of savings built up, because obviously the one risk of doing your own business or freelancing is that a client might leave you or something like that. So you do want to give yourself a little bit of a safety barrier there, but that shouldn't deter you from doing it. You just need to be aware of it.
What I would caveat and say to that is I'm on your team, but I think the way how society has been set up is that the whole institution, and I know this is something that Simon echoes massively with his content, is that the institution has been set up to encourage people to work in a job. And a perfect example is if you're to get a mortgage and you work in a job, all you need is 3 months worth of pay slips. However, if you're self-employed, you need 2 years of your salary pinned down, and they take the average of that. And I think if you look at someone there, and even the incentives now of running your own business, taxes are going up towards businesses, so everything's getting squeezed there. And I think I can see it from the lens of I was fortunate to get a mortgage a couple of years ago, but it was so difficult for me to do so being self-employed. And for so many people, again, that's looking at just the basic of shelter, housing. We all need housing, and that's kind of pushed away. And I think that's a big disincentive towards people, because I've seen myself, I've been on this journey for 7 years, 5 years full time. It's so difficult that you're trying to minimize these costs and you're trying to follow your passion and do stuff that you love. But at times it's like, well, I could go and do this completely other thing, this thing that's completely different. And the big thing is safety. And that's why, in my opinion, entrepreneurship is not for everyone, because as you said, you lose a client. Or I know in COVID, a friend of mine, he lost all of his business and had to rebuild, and he's done it really successfully. But the risk factors there, they cause a lot of long-lasting stress.
Yeah, I personally would be careful with the idea of entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, only because I think, to me, it depends on how you define entrepreneurship. If entrepreneurship is, building, let's say, a sizable company with multiple employees, then sure, maybe it's not for everyone. But I do believe that everyone can get to the point where they are their own boss. It's mainly just around education. Even if you're just, say, like a freelancer, like to some, you could say that is entrepreneurship. But I think every day, like the way that the world is going, like we were talking about before the podcast, what Naval talks about in the gig economy getting more common in more industries. I think everyone could do that in the future. And yes, it will take a lot of education. It will probably also take, some more incentives and support from the governments rather than they do now, to make people's lives a little bit easier. But I do 100% believe that everyone could be in control of their own time and their own income if they have the right knowledge and the right thing that they want to do, and a skill that's valuable enough to the market.
Well, I think the point you're making there looks back at the way how society was 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. There was no contracts that so and so worked for other people. It's pretty much, we lived in a barter economy whereby I might make corn and you farm cows, and we exchange corn for milk, and that's the way how it operates. And this kind of, and Naval is where I've got a lot of my literature and learnings from, is this, that kind of the new industrial revolution, so to speak, is we have factories, people work in the factories, they go for a Fordism business model, they create cars, they manufacture vehicles, and then that's the end of it. And I really believe, similar to what you're saying, there's a massive gap, and the gig economy is surging. People are turning around and they're working with 3 or 5 different businesses, and they have the opportunity to have more flexibility and freedom there. I still do believe that the society needs a cornerstone of people who are employees, so to speak, because that's how basic functions are there. But maybe the whole infrastructure changes and it's more informal as opposed to a very formal, rigid structure.
Yeah, maybe. And even if and while there are people like working as an employee, which I think is fine. I think people just need the knowledge and the education to know that they can become an entrepreneur, or they can take control of their life, their time, their outcomes, if they want to do that. And that's the big gap to me. It's not necessarily about forcing everyone into entrepreneurship or forcing everyone to be their own boss, but I do believe everyone, flat out everyone, should get the education on how to do that. Because one, I think a lot more people would do it, and a lot more people would do it well. But two, because the skills that it takes to do that actually just make you a really valuable human being in general, even if you're not a business owner. If you can learn sales, if you can learn marketing, if you can learn I don't know, development or leadership skills, or how to deal with people. All of these things that you're going to have to learn, finance, all these things you're going to have to learn while building a company. Even if you don't go and build a company, you're going to be much more valuable to society and probably be able to get a much higher paying job. So sure, not everyone has to do it, but I think everyone should get given the education and knowledge to do it if they want to, because everyone currently learns Pythagoras theorem and trigonometry, which sure, fine, a couple of people might use, but not many people actually use it. So why can't we teach them something that they're actually going to need and use in their life?
I completely agree with you there. And I think the education system pretty much globally is flawed in that sense that we're not taught the Robert Kiyosaki basics of money management and how to save. And probably one of the biggest important lessons that is just glossed over in maths is compound interest. If people understood that if they put £1 into an account and they left it there, where it would be in 30, 50 years' time, but it's just glossed over. And I think that's a massive flaw within our society. And I suppose that's what a lot about what you're doing with HelpBank, and that's why it's such a progressive movement, and people are seeing that they can believe in stuff. And I think to what we spoke about just before we went live with this is you asked me what's the difference between people who are making or wanting to quit a job, get to say 3 to 5 grand versus people who want to scale their business to 10 to 20K is the belief. The amount of people who I speak to, and I know you guys speak to on a massive scale on the streets of Carnaby Street all the way to Florida, wherever you go in the world, is people just don't have the belief. And what I love about Simon's content is within 30 seconds, he breaks down. Someone wants to be a DJ. Okay, well, here's how you can start. You can go on SoundCloud and you can turn around and send the track that you make to all of your friends and then get them to promote it out there. But I think where everyone looks at, they try to look at, oh, well, I need to headline a Schweier in Ibiza next year. Well, mate, there's like 50 steps in between there to get to that level. And you need to start and look at the first few levels of steps. And that, for me, comes wholeheartedly down to people's belief systems and just having the information and knowledge to look at taking those first few steps.
Exactly. It all comes down to education and beliefs to me, and that's why, in such a big way, we try and help people, mainly the viewers of the content that we put out and the stuff that we do online, help them, break down those beliefs and get that education that they need, because then people can make their own decisions. But you need the tools. You need the tools to do so.
So, looking at everyone that you guys have worked with and you've seen, is there any just crazy success stories that you've seen over the last few years? Just someone that's just taken things by storm. You're like, we were there at the get-go.
Yeah, there's so many, to be honest, especially now, again, because you spoke about compound interest. Like, business is slow to get started. We've only been doing this, a couple of years. So people, a lot of people don't take action. Some do. And then the ones that do, slowly they see some failure, some progress. But then over time, they see the compound interest of success, because compound interest isn't just financially. Compound interest comes in a lot of areas of life when you work at the same thing over time, and then you reap more and more and more rewards the longer you're at it. The same goes sure in the S&P 500, but also in business, because you just get more reps in the game, you meet more people, and you build a bigger team, and then it compounds and compounds and compounds. And bringing that back to success stories, now we're starting to see a lot. One standout one that comes to mind is John and James, the Macanola twins. They clean places nobody asked them to clean. They came and pitched to our doorbell originally. They actually cleaned the staircase for us without asking, and they just wanted to start a cleaning company. And they told me they only needed £1,000 a month between them to live, because they got their cost down so low, and that's all they needed. And they just kind of needed some advice, a bit of a break. And they've done it all themselves, but we gave them a bit of a platform. We gave them some content advice, and also a little bit of business advice where they need it. And now they've got hundreds of thousands of followers on social media today. They were on BBC News the other day about cleaning the London Underground, and they're making enough to sustain themselves. And this is just the start of their journey. So and they're such good guys with such good genuine energy and heart and motivation around what they're doing, it's so happy to see them succeed. And there are a lot of stories like that, but I think we're just going to keep seeing more and more of those as the compound kind of takes effect. But I want to
Fair play
stress
to
though,
them. Amazing.
it's not us. It's not us that does that. It's the individuals themselves. We're not trying to help loads of people one on one at scale, because that's not scalable. We're just trying to give people the access to the community and tools they need on HelpBank, and also give them a little bit of advice if they come in contact with us, but also just inspire them and kind of change their mindset a bit with the content. And then people take action themselves off their own back. So all the success stories, I very much credit to them.
True, but I would not discredit and downplay what you guys are doing, because I feel everyone needs someone there. And I think I remember I put a post out on LinkedIn about a year and a half ago, and I spoke about a teacher from my secondary school. I hate school, secondary school especially. I got bullied. I was fat. I fucking hated going to school. I would get the last bus I could to get to school, and I would be the first one out of school because I hated it. I just didn't like the system. And then I learned to love uni, and I learned to love studying. And then eventually, when I could do my own things with business, that was it. I realized that I like being by myself. I would say I'm an extrovert, but I like just doing my own work, going at the end of the day and saying, oh, cool, I created this. Point I was making is I had a teacher, an English teacher in year 10 and 11, Mr. Brzezinski, and I made a post about him. And then my sister, she went to my secondary school. I was there earlier this year, back in the summer, and I saw him from afar, and I went up to him, shook his hand and told him this. And I said, thank you so much, sir. And he's like, oh, if you can send me the post. Then his wife reposted it on her feed. And it was such a wholesome, full circle moment. Someone who taught me in 2010, 2011, I was able to just go back up to him and say, I waited for that day. I waited to go back and say, yeah, he didn't do the work for me, but he did one thing. He gave me belief in myself and what I could do. And just him sitting behind and taking me behind for a few sessions. I think we had like 3 one-to-ones after school where he just said, hey, can you come back and I'll teach you how to use commas. I was such a fucking idiot that I didn't know how to use commas. And there's nothing wrong with people who don't know how to use commas. But he just simplified it for me. And him doing that gave me so much confidence. And I think, yeah, he and teachers are some of the biggest, most unsung heroes throughout society because they're so underplayed. He did that for me, and it took one guy. I think what you guys are doing, you're giving people that platform to think, you know what? These twins were able to do it, and this girl over here was able to do it. Yeah, I can do it now.
Yeah, 100%. What was the teacher's name?
Mr. Brzezinski.
Shout out Mr. Brzezinski.
Shout out Mr. Brzezinski indeed.
There's a lot of amazing teachers like that that are doing playing such an amazing role within our society. And I really wish that the system and the curriculum didn't have to kind of go against them, because they're doing so much good, despite the fact that the curriculum that they're forced to teach and the way in which they're forced to teach isn't ideal. They're underpaid, but the difference that they make to children's lives when they do their job well, which so many of them do, is just incredible. I love that story.
Oh, yeah, I mean, thank you to him. He was such a pivotal essence of my childhood for a few years, and apart from family, is one of the few people that I think he was the first person to me outside of my family who really believed in me, and that meant so much. So yeah, I'm so grateful towards him. Jack, are you a reader?
Yes, I am, on and off, unfortunately, but I am overall, yes.
Or audiobooks as well. What would you say to people are your top 3 audiobooks or books recommendations in the realm of business entrepreneurship?
First one, shameless plug, but a genuine plug, is What's Your Dream by Simon Squibb. It's not out yet. It's out in January. But I've read it, and it's genuinely insane. I hope he doesn't mind me saying it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I don't know why. I don't know what I thought, but it's genuinely so good, because it helps people, take the steps they need to realize their potential and then take action on it. Kind of like Think and Grow Rich does, but that book's nearly 100 years old now. So genuinely, that book is should and I hope does become a staple for people when they start out. Second one is Reality Transurfing by Vadim Zeland, I believe is how you pronounce it.
What
He's
was the book called?
a
Sorry,
Russian
Reality.
quantum physicist. Reality
Can you repeat?
Transurfing.
I've never heard of it, but it sounds very intriguing. What's the essence of it?
So it talks about every single reality that you can think of and that doesn't break the laws of physics has existed and does exist somewhere out there in the ether. What you have to basically do is set an intention and walk towards that reality and jump onto that lifeline, as simple as if you're walking to the shop and buying a newspaper. And it talks about all these different realities and how basically you can create your own reality by following a model that he calls reality transurfing. And it sounds super woo woo, and it's, I guess, super hard to explain in a way that doesn't simply. But the reason that it's so transformational again is because it helps you kind of realize what's possible. It helps you. He talks about concepts like for example excess potential, where if you want something so bad, you end up kind of pushing it away because you're creating this weird energy between you and the thing that you want. Whereas if you kind of reduce importance of it, and you know that this thing, this reality is right here, it exists out there in the ether, and you can just walk towards it. You don't put any weird energy in the way of that, and you can literally just create your own reality by like setting goals or setting visions and walking towards it. And there's a lot more that goes into it, but it's not too complex. But genuinely, that's been super transformative for me, that book. So I definitely recommend that. And then
Have you read? Sorry to interrupt you. Have you read Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz?
Yes, yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 as well. I love that.
Very similar synergies to what you mentioned there, but he mentions about, I believe he was a plastic surgeon back in the 1960s, and guys like Tony Robbins have emulated a lot of their theory and thinkings off of Maxwell and his literature there. But from what you mentioned there, it sounds like there's a lot of crossover between the two.
Yeah, for sure. There is, and that's a super good book as well. The third one, there's a lot that come to mind, but I think particularly for listeners of this podcast, pick up $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. It's kind of become a staple in the entrepreneurship space now, but what's so good about it is he breaks down in a very simple way, how to make an offer to sell to people that will make them feel stupid saying no, but in a way that is simple and scalable. And the book isn't that big, and it's also really, really clear. So if you're looking to kind of go, let's say, from a job to a business, or you're starting out a business, particularly as some type of service provider, it lays the roadmap out super simply and clearly. So I'd give that book to people that are looking to make their first 3 to 5K online, like the people that you help are. Along with What's Your Dream, but they're very different. That one's very like actionable. What's Your Dream is more helping you to change your mindset and then establish what you're going to go after.
Yeah, I think $100 million offers is very tactical, and you can take so many techniques. What I love about it is that you can read the book and straight away you can implement things into your business, and you can test, you can figure out the messaging of an offer and the offer you're presenting. And it's so true that there's been times where I've been on sales calls with prospects. So Jack, I've got a question from the internet, and I'm so curious to get your perspective on it. So a fellow entrepreneur asked, how do I go about finding out what I actually want to do?
Yeah, it's a super good question. And maybe there's not a one size fits all answer, because it can come from anywhere or anyone at any time. But overall, my general advice would be, follow your curiosities. Don't ignore them. Help yourself get to a place where you have the freedom to think and have some time. Whether it's a part-time job and that gives you spare time to think, or whether it's starting a small business and getting to the point where your bases are covered so you have time to think. But giving yourself that kind of headspace where you're not in fight or flight is quite a good place if you're trying to dedicate time to finding it. And then also working with other people who do have found an obvious purpose to their life. which is something Simon talks about a lot because it is really infectious. And if the people that you're attracted to, um, who you've seen that have found, let's say found their purpose, it might end up your purpose is very similar to theirs if they've been inspiring you, or it might not. But seeing people and being around other people who kind of act and live their life in that way is very inspiring and very infectious, and it kind of rubs off on you. And then beyond that, I think you've just kind of got to let it happen. See what problems annoy you, or see what opportunities really excite you, or see what you find yourself doing without having to be paid for it and without getting tired of it. Like I said, follow your curiosities. Light the sparks that come up when you're having certain conversations or doing certain things. And then at some point you will find it. But then I'll also caveat of you don't, you might have multiple purposes throughout your life. And that might change. I'm in my 20s. I don't necessarily know for certain what my life purpose is, but I know 100% right now the thing I'm most motivated to do is to inspire people to be free and show people that they can do what they want, particularly those that have a spark, show them how they can take control of their life. And there's a lot of people that can really, really benefit from that knowledge, inspiration, and having a community of other people that are like that. So, for this season of my life, at the very least, that's kind of my North Star.
I think you touched upon something there where I think people, they get caught in this rock and hard place of they're trying to look too far down the line, that they're not just looking at the next step. And as you said, I always believe it's a case of getting your bases covered. We know that we need to make X amount to cover your bases. It's keeping, Alex Hormozy says it's you can't lose if you don't quit. If you can just keep yourself perpetually in the game, then you're just giving yourself the opportunity to have that standout month, or to have enough things that happen that continue the belief so you can grow. And I think one thing that is really suppressed as we get older and as we become adults is play and experiment. And in order for kids aged between 2 to 5 to develop, the most important thing they need is to play. It's not to learn. And I think if you can flip the caveat of you can't play when you're an adult, but if you can figure out ways to use your time in the evenings to express yourself and play and learn and develop, you'll find what you're doing. And I think my jiu-jitsu coach, Martin, he's an amazing guy. He was a hairdresser for years. And I spoke to him and I said, how did you become a full-time jiu-jitsu instructor? And for him, he doesn't make millions, not even close to it. But he's one of the happiest guys I've ever met, because A, he gets to do what he wants every single day, which is teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu. B, he can play his music and he's like, you know what, I'm just happy. I come to a place where I play the tunes that I want to play. I do the thing that I want to do. In the day, I can go on YouTube and study more jiu-jitsu. And for the season, a big season of his life, his purpose, his play was cutting hair. And I know he loved that. And for the last, I think he's been full-time for 7 years as a jiu-jitsu instructor. Now his new season is this. And I think exactly to what you said, I think people get caught up in saying that they think they have to stick to doing what they're doing now because that's what's going to make them a millionaire or successful. But success, for me, that I wrote down today compared to what I wrote at 20 years old is so different. And the only thing I thought I deemed a success when I was 18, 19, 20 was how many O's do I have in my account? But I think you touched upon it so well at the start is you spoke about relationships with your family, friends, being a better person, love. These are so many things that I think so many people shy away from, and they move and they deviate and they just become so insulated about the only way how they deem success is through money. But I think there's so many layers, and if you can touch upon personal development as we are on this podcast, then you look at things from a completely different sphere.
Yeah, for sure. You want to know what your values are as well, and you can probably work this out yourself. I actually did an interesting personality quiz. It's actually by Ty Lopez, but it's really, really good, and it basically gives you.
Do you remember the name?
He has loads. I think this one's called the 4 M's. But it's.
We'll put a link in the description for people.
Yeah, definitely. It's free and it was super helpful. Of course, he gets your email address out of it, but genuinely, it is it is a really good quiz. And but what it gives you is it kind of shows your main motivators at the end. And there's four different sections. There's money and material things. There's freedom. There's love and relationships, and then there's mastery and status. And different people have different priorities within those at a different level. So each one is numbered 1 to 100, and then you'll have a number out of 100 for each of those. So for me, my top one is love and relationships, but very very closely followed by mastery, and then very 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 closely followed by freedom. um, that I think love and mastery was like love and relationships was like 83, and then maybe the mastery was like 80 and freedom was like 79 or something like that. And then material was, I think, maybe 46 or something for me. So that's lower down on my scale, but that is really accurate. There I'm quite, I guess, an extreme person, so it doesn't surprise me that the three of them are like very, very important to me. But that's how I see it. Some people might really want freedom, or really want money, or really want the relationships, and I think in general, like, you want all of those things in your life. They're good pillars to life. But also knowing like which ones are most important to you, I think, is kind of handy, because then you can optimize your life around that as well.
Absolutely. I guess a very, very big, broad question. Is there anything you can pinpoint and signal out to being the thing that you're most proud of that you've achieved in your business career today?
Yeah, I'll give you a cheeky answer, and you can tell me if I'm allowed to give it or not. But it's definitely my relationships, 100%. But I would expand it just to be kind of in my life. I'm very proud of my relationship with my partner. I'm very proud of my relationship with my parents. And then in terms of business, I'm incredibly proud of the relationship I have with my co-founders, and then with the team as well. And that's what really really matters to me, because if I have all of those things, we can do anything together, even if everything fails and I have those things, and we have the right mission and mindset around everything, we can pick back up and we can go again. So that's the proudest thing for me.
I think it's well said. And I think and just before this call, I had a call with my email guy, and I said, where I think a lot of people go wrong in business is they want a cake this big and they want all of it, whereas they could have a cake which is 100 times the size and then get 2% of it, and that still be double what they've got of that current cake. And I think that's where people struggle so much. And I think, and I did a personality quiz by one of my clients a couple months ago, and I would say I'm very similar to you. It said that my biggest trait was relationships. I love talking to people and networking with people, and I guess this podcast for me is the emulation. It's the epitome of that, because I get to sit down with cool, amazing people like you, inspiring people, like, must say, not even trying to lick ass or blow smoke up your ass. It's the truth. I get to sit down with people who I think actually we have a conversation here that goes way beneath the glorification of you've been able to do X, Y, Z. It's actually, here's the raw truth maybe of building a business. And I think I would encourage people to take tests, like you've mentioned, Ty Lopez's 4M's quiz, which I've just pulled up now, because it can give you a real essence of what motivates you. For some people, they might be super motivated by materialism, and that might stem from childhood trauma of not feeling loved, so therefore they need to replace that there. And that's a completely different conversation, but it's great that at the ages that we're at, we're able to look at that and lean into the things that make us happy. I guess talking about the not so glamorous side of business, have you had any moments in business where you felt like quitting?
My instinctual answer is no, and then even after thinking about it, it's still no. I've never considered quitting, because I think once I started, I made the commitment to myself that I will make this work. I have to make this work, and also, even through the bad times, I'm living in much better alignment with myself than I ever was before. That, like I said, even if it had failed, I'd have tried something else. So no, definitely not. There's been hard times, though. Don't get me wrong, and I'm sure there's a lot more hard times to come. I am only a few years in, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And hard times create a better story, and they teach you things that you might not have learned otherwise. So it's just part of the journey, part of the game. There's a great Nietzsche quote as well, where it's strong men, um, and the most intelligent men are able to have fun and play with burdens so big that they would crush other people. And I butchered it a little bit, but you get the idea. Back to what you were saying earlier, you can literally just play, have fun with things, um, but with burdens so big that you might not have realized that you were even capable of dealing with it. I really like the idea of putting myself through those situations throughout life to kind of prove how strong I am and what I can overcome. And again, maybe not everyone wants to do that to the same extent as me, and I definitely don't want to do that to the same extent as someone like Elon Musk, who goes through ridiculous amount of pain and stress and struggle every day. I know I couldn't do what he does, but I do
I don't
think
think I would
there's
want to
something
do it.
really. No, exactly. But there's something really beautiful, though, whether it's small or big, in in taking on some pain, whether you've chosen to take it on or whether it's just happened to you, and proving that you can get through that and overcome it. I feel like it's a massive part to self development and to living a better life.
And I think, and Elon said before, someone said, "Oh, I'd love to be Elon Musk," and he said, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said along the lines, he said, "If you knew what it costs to be me, only a 1 in 1,000 people would want to do what I do." And I think equally, Elon, in the realms of business, innovation, and what he's done for society, is I believe he will be one of these people that will be remembered in 100 years' time. But if you look at it, and I'm not criticizing or judging his life personally, but the guy's gone through multiple marriages. He doesn't have a great relationship with one of his children. And the point I'm getting to is, whatever you achieve in life, there's always a cost somewhere else. There are dozens of people who are massively successful, millionaires, billionaires, who don't have relationships with their family, who are massively overweight, who are depressed. And it's just about picking your path that you think is authentic to you and trying to follow it as much as you can. Have you familiar with the parable of burning the boats?
To the extent of burn the boats like the Vikings did around taking risk and then pursuing it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, pretty much. Just a captain hit an island. He had 3 boats. Half of his men wanted to get back on the boat and leave. Half the army were ready to fight. So he turned around to his 2 generals and said, "There's the rope. Set it alight and burn the boats. And until we either win this war, we lose this war, we're in this war." And I think I took that a few years ago because I came to a point when COVID hit. I remember I was on ASDA's job board looking at jobs, and I said, "No, no, 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 no. You're going to give yourself the next month of working the most you've ever worked in your life, because if you quit right now, that is a disservice to you." And that for me was burning the boats since then, and I've never looked back since.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's definitely there's something big in that of just of being able to just decide, okay, I'm going to make this work, because then you'll achieve more than you ever thought you could when you feel like you have to. Simon talks about needing something rather than wanting something, and it's definitely powerful. And then I'd also add on top of that, making sure that your lane is authentic to you. Because if you're in a lane that is authentic to you, working in a vehicle on a purpose and a mission that is authentic to you, doing a service that you're good at, or any of these things that is genuinely quite authentic to you, it's going to be way easier. It's going to be like swimming like with the current rather than against the current. And I've had this myself. I've tried to do things that aren't authentic to me, and it's 10 times harder than doing something that is. So um, that's also something I'd add in as well. Again, business will be hard. I'm not saying it will be easy if you're doing the right thing, but it becomes a lot easier because you're kind of leveraging your competitive advantages and what you enjoy and what's authentic to you. So then you can kind of outskill, outsmart, outwork other people, and also you're just more motivated to do a better job.
That's it. The man who works on something that he is unequivocally passionate about day in, day out will always outperform the person who is just doing it to make money. And that was a lesson that I was taught by my mentor years ago.
Yeah, I love that.
Amazing. Jack, I really appreciate your time. This has been one of the best podcasts that I've shot. Thank you. Where can people find you, and what's next for you, Help Banking, everything you're doing in 2025?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. This has been amazing. You can find me at Jack Whettingsteel on Instagram or my name on LinkedIn. Also, if you check out helpbank.com, it's our platform where you can get help to grow a business from the community and get rewarded for helping others as well. But what's next? We we have a big mission. Like I've hopefully kind of got across a little bit within this podcast. There's a lot of people that need some inspiration, that need to be woken up, and that need some help. We're going to keep building infrastructure and tools and tech that help people with that. We're going to keep building content that inspires people to wake up, and we're going to keep building, businesses that fit within this ethos and can then fund everything that we're doing to continue giving people free inspiration, free help, and all of that. So 2025 is all of that in a very big way.
Exciting stuff. Jack, appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Joe.